when Greta Thunberg and John Kerry, superglue themselves to the pavement outside one of the new coal-powered energy plants they are building every couple of days in China, then I'll take you seriously. But telling me I have to buy a Tesla, sod off. Thank you very much.
Hi folks, I have the absolute pleasure to be able to interview Dr. Sebastian Gorka about his latest book, The War for America's Soul. He's the host of a radio show called America First, 5 days a week, and he was, of course, the Deputy Assistant to President Trump in 2017. Sebastian, how are you?
I am very well, Carl, especially after our chat last week. I do long form. I do 3 hours of radio every single day across America. Third hour is always a long form dedicated to a special guest one-on-one. And I have to say, yours was one of the most personally satisfying for me, philosophically and politically. So if you guys haven't seen our interview with Sargon, you've got to go to sebgorka.com. That's SEBGORKA, sebgorka.com, because I hope you had as much fun as I did.
I always do. The time just flies by far too quickly. So right, let's begin talking about the subject of the book, because I think this is exactly the point that America, the inflection point that America's on, is what kind of country is America going to be? Is it going to be sort of a European style, sort of French democracy, or is it going to be a sort of classical American democracy? That's how I see it. What do you think?
A far wiser person than me, Os Guinness, the prolific author, philosopher, public commentator, said, we have a very simple choice. Most big questions in politics really aren't nuanced about different interest rate policies and so forth. It's the division between two types of person or two types of view of human beings. Do you believe in the idea that man is mutable, can be changed, can be formed? Or do you believe that man's nature is pretty immutable? As a result, the choices between the American Revolution and the French Revolution. Burke was right when it comes to the French Revolution, one of the most disastrous things for humankind, because people actually were driven by the idea we can create utopia on Earth. And as a result of that end state being amazing, we can get away with everything. Madame Guillotine, 100 million killed in the name of communist utopia. Or you have the American Revolution, which was driven by human beings who came from Europe, knew the limitations of Western culture, and understood that for humankind to flourish, we have to have a system that understands the individual is the center. Why? Because we are made in the image of our creator, and limited government is the way to go. Right now, we have two visions of humankind. We have the populist left wing like Bernie Sanders, or we have the populist believing in the nation state national identity, which is Brexit, which is Trump, was Modi. I think Modi's kind of fallen out of that basket, but it's a very simple, dichotomous choice, Carl.
Yeah, I think this is exactly the right framing as well. And I think the root of it comes from the Rousseauian idea of exchanging natural rights for civil rights. And this is something that I think a lot of people have never really thought about. Like, what is a civil right exactly? And a civil right is exactly what the government chooses to give you. Whereas the natural right, as you say, it's if you, and I think the problem we have is, and I say this as a 90s atheist, leaving the religious paradigm that these are God-given rights means that all you're left with are what the government will give you. And so we're seeing the lack of the virtue in what the previous paradigm was, is that, okay, there is actually a purpose to having this religious view. That is, there are intrinsic rights that God has given you. And it is exactly the Lockean paradigm where actually you sacrifice a portion of those in exchange for security of the others. But in the Rousseauian paradigm, you have none at all, and it's all what the government gives you. And as you're saying, we've seen the problems with this, haven't we? I mean, like, it's everywhere. It's manifest. I mean, I don't know how much you follow the news from the UK, but you should see the state of the NHS at the moment.
Oh, yeah. No, absolutely. I, having been born in the UK, born and bred, and left when I was 23, I do follow it quite closely, and I listen to talk radio when I'm walking the dog here in the US. But it's deeper than that, if I may, because yes, it's about what the government deigns to give you in terms of your rights. But the lacunae, the hole is much larger, because the question is, where does right come from, right? This is whether you're Plato, Aristotle, or Socrates, the question of what is the good. if you're a secular postmodernist deconstructionist, then, well, where does it come from? It comes from nowhere unless I deem it to be right, which is just capricious and fiat. And there's a reason why the American system is very clear. You don't have to be a Christian to be an American, but American values are Christian. That's why our founding document has the word creator with a capital C in it. These guys weren't deists. That's a modern canard. They actually were Christians, and they understood Western civilization is built upon standards, is built upon principles that go back to Judeo-Christian mores and are not up for debate. And look at the latest Sam Harris clip. I mean, you know the guys from Trigonometry, love Konstantin Kisin, love Francis Foster. What did they manage to do with this darling of the secular left, one of the four horsemen of the godless secular apocalypse?
One of my influences from when I was young, actually.
Well, of course, I mean, for millions. Yeah. I mean, worshipped by people who said, wow, that's what intellect looks like. And he actually says, I mean, he says, and I don't think he was trolling, because you look, he picked his words very, he didn't knee-jerk react. You can tell there are moments in that 90-minute interview where he really pauses, because he's calculating what he really wants to say, because he's this is who he is. And he says, I don't care if there were dead children's bodies in Hunter Biden's basement. We had to censor that laptop because Donald Trump was an apocalyptic event. And he uses the word tens of millions of morons voted for him. I mean, that's what is the separation, Carl? What is the separation between that statement and saying, well, Stalin's phrase, to make an omelet, you got to crack eggs. I mean, you got to kill 8 million Ukrainians in the Holodomor because paradise.
It is the same statement.
It is.
It is the same principle. It is the same motive. But I'm glad you brought up the Sam Harris interview, because I mean, it was genuinely a revelatory moment for a lot of people, I think. What was the disaster of Donald Trump? Like, it wasn't economic, like it wasn't world peace. It was surely just a disaster for the rationalistic view of the French Revolution, surely.
I'll tell you what it was. It comes later on in the interview. I did a whole monologue on my TV show here on Newsmax, because everybody, they all focused on the dead children in the basement clip, which is of course horrifying. But the real, peek behind the curtain and the opening of the kimono was about 30 minutes later, where he says why we had to stop Donald Trump. And who's we? I mean, who elected Sam Harris? I mean, nobody elected Sam Harris. He didn't run for county dog catcher. We had to stop him. Twitter had to censor the story from the New York Post about the laptop. Why? And he says, because Hillary and Biden are the, quote, normal politicians, who are bounded by limits and work within the institutions that Trump wants to destroy. Well, that's the effing point, Sam. We elected him to destroy the institutions that were corrupt, the institutions that raid a president's private residence, and we're 2 weeks past that, and we don't know why. So Sam's excuse, the apocalyptic end, was his power base, his recognition as a member of an unaccountable elite, whether it's Brussels or whether it's DC. He wants to have unchallenged power with his buddies, and that's why you had to stop Trump. I mean, I said it when I was in the White House. I said it after I left the White House. Donald Trump won despite the Republican Party, not thanks to the Republican Party, because nobody owned him. Name a lobby group in America: Big Pharma, pharmaceuticals, oil, the left-wing teachers' unions. None of them own President Trump. None of them. That's why he is a danger to what Steve Bannon called the uniparty. And that's why they tried to destroy him incessantly for 6 years, and they're still trying.
Oh, no, I completely agree. And you are absolutely right. The paradigm that Sam Harris is committed to, and it's so strange because he doesn't seem to be excessively emotional when he's explaining, look, I have extreme Trump derangement syndrome, and I will literally accept dead children in the basement, or this nightmare neoliberal paradigm that is destroying the United States, if it means things carry on as normal. But things carrying on as normal is terrible. Like the way things have been going. Look at what Biden's doing. Biden is literally destroying the United States. He is literally running it into the ground. He is making regular people suffer. And Sam Harris is like, yeah, but I don't want change. Change would be bad. It's like, no, anything would be better than this, surely. Sure.
Yeah, so Konstantin Kisin analyzed it in their podcast on trigonometry after the thing became viral and blew up. And he said this is a typical facet of the uber secular rationalists that pretend they're getting rid of their emotional inputs, but in fact justify their emotional reactions by false rationalization. They create a seemingly unemotional explication for what they really have, which is hatred. Hatred. Look, there are many things to hate about President Trump, and not just the fact that he threatens your rice bowl. There's class as well. I mean, look, when I went to a stadium with the president, and there's 60,000, this is in a working class area. This is in Youngstown, Ohio, which is the steel rust belt of America. And there's 60,000 people in the stadium screaming, USA, USA. And I was in the pit. I was getting selfies with the people. And I know they're all former registered Democrats. Their dads were Democrats. Their granddads worked in the mill as Democrats. And they're screaming USA, USA. That's a threat because they identify with this person at a guttural, visceral level, because when they hear stories like, and this is true, I can verify, when he's on Air Force One, which by the way is better than the movies. I mean, I'm sorry, it is better than anything that Harrison Ford shared with you. Right. He's eating Big Macs. We have a naval mess on board Air Force One that is making you the finest White House food. No. He's having pizza and Big Macs delivered onto Air Force One as a billionaire from Manhattan. And the working class steelworker says, you know what? If I were on Air Force One, I'd be eating a Big Mac too. Yeah. I mean, on that point, there was a classic in 2017. I remember, I think it was 2017. There was a classic photo that went around of the Big Macs on the silver platters. And I was watching the reaction from the pampered upper class coastal elites, and they were pouring scorn. They were horrified. And dismiss. They were like, oh my God, look at the low class. And I was just like, you guys don't understand what you're seeing there. Because when I was a kid, going to McDonald's at the weekend was a big treat. It was a big thing. So I come from a very humble background, and that was the thing you looked forward to during the week, And a lot of the lads, all these footballers that came in, they don't come from rich backgrounds. They were thinking, oh, brilliant, Big Macs, And he had a sports team in the White House, okay? Yeah. A sport, 16 stone giants, okay? Yeah. And Hillary Clinton and Biden would be having, smoked artisanal Alaskan salmon sous vide, right? Yeah. That's what they'd be giving them. And President Trump says, "Oi, boys, you want a Big Mac or do you want a fillet of fish?" Right? Oh yeah, they don't understand that this is now a sentimental issue, right? This is about an emotional connection to the country as as kind of incarnation of America. Like, there's no one more American than Donald Trump. And so when Donald Trump steps in and says, look, I'm actually really concerned about the way the country's going. I want to save it and make it great again. Like the regular person in the flyover states, they don't need to know about policy. They don't know about policy. No. They don't care about policy. What they want is someone who's working in their interests. And Donald Trump, the attempts to portray him as a traitor to the Russians, it's like, look, it might have worked with anyone else, folks. It might have worked with anyone else. But I genuinely believe that Donald Trump had Big Macs on Air Force One, all right? Yeah. You don't understand. It's not the guy. This is not the guy, So, No, go ahead. Well, they don't realize that so much of politics works from the gut. They think, if you present me your policy, no one cares about that. People care about who they think is on their side. This is all emotional. There's two things that I just add to that. So number one, I have a reputation. I think the Telegraph wrote a piece about me when I was in the White House as, President Trump's pit bull or something. I have a reputation for being a hardcore America First guy. But that's why I like you. Cheers. But after about 6 years of living this life, because I have a show that isn't called the Sebastian Gorka Show because I hate that. It's called America First. Okay. After 6 years of what I've been through, and especially my family, there are moments when I say, what is it with these people? Because I get it. I'm a proxy for the president. You can come after me. I had one journalist write 52 hit pieces on me in 6 weeks. But when they come after my wife, when they come after my 18-year-old son with a headline in an article that calls him a traitor, this is a kid in high school, okay? You go, what is it about these people? And the soft part of you wants to try and understand, if at all possible, what is the source of the vituperation? And it came to me about a year ago, Carl. there's two types of people in America right now. If you ignore the useful idiots and the apolitical people, there are those that love America, and there are those that hate it. And I mean hate it. I mean, the Black Lives Matter, the 1619 Project, we are the most dangerous nation on earth. We are the new colonials. This is how you divide the nation. And it's clear this man loves America, utterly loves America. And if you think that we are a universal good, not in terms of intervening across the globe, but as that shining city on the hill that Reagan called it, then you're going to relate to this man. If you look like a member of the swamp, can we just remind everybody, Biden was in politics for 47 years before he became president. 40, he's never had a job, a real job ever. He's never signed the front of a check, only the back of checks. And how does this man become a paragon of the new left? That's where we are today.
It's the same in Britain as well, where the left has completely diverged from working class interests. They've become internationalists, universalists. They've said, oh, well, there's, and people forget how socially conservative working class people tend to be, because actually there's a purpose towards a sort of social conservatism. It prevents you from making mistakes that might be difficult to deal with if you're not, well, I don't know, wealthy, perhaps. If you can't afford the consequences of your actions, or daddy won't pay for them, or whatever. So you've got to be prudent. And that's what much of social conservatism is based on. And so the working class, frankly, have to be that way. And so, like, all of the left at the moment, they're on this wild utopian boondoggle where they think they can universalize everything, fix the world, all the human beings of the earth can come and live in our countries, and there'll be no negative consequences. It is insane. It is insane.
But it's not just that. The dangerous aspect of the people we're facing down today, Carl, is they're also stupid. I mean, it is a massively dangerous cocktail. It's the concatenation of arrogance and ignorance. I mean, the idea that you're going to change the weather. You're going to make policies in your government that are going to change the weather, irrespective of that giant fireball in the sky that has more impact on the weather than any government policy could ever have.
I've got to stop you there. I've heard reliably from CNN that it's a conspiracy theory that the sun has any effect on the temperature of the earth. We've been fact checked on that. No, of course, none. Obviously.
And then on the other hand, the arrogance or the way they treat their fellow man. I mean, Greta Thunberg and John Kerry flying around the world on his private jet. When Greta Thunberg and John Kerry, superglue themselves to the pavement outside one of the new coal-powered energy plants they are building every couple of days in China, then I'll take you seriously. But telling me I have to buy a Tesla, sod off. Thank you very much.
And there is a remarkable amount of arrogance to it, isn't it? The idea that this is the whole thing where they feel that they've like annexed to themselves a kind of godlike power. So we are the masters of everything on the earth, including the weather, everything. It's like, have a little bit of humility, people. Has the COVID crisis not taught us anything about the reliability of experts? And this is another thing that I really want to talk to you about, actually, because Michael Gove, when it came up to Brexit, there was a famous quip that I wish he'd doubled down on, where the interviewer was saying, well, the experts are saying this, the experts are saying that. And he just replies with, look, I think people have had enough of experts. And the expert class were like, oh, you can't say that. And it's like, no, actually I can. I don't need you to run my life.
Right. No, this is somebody needs to write this book, the death of the experts, because so I spent, I don't know if you know my career prior to the White House. So I left the UK when the wall fell. I worked in Hungary for the first freely elected conservative government in the defense ministry. I started teaching in 1994. So I've been a professor in Europe. I've taught for the Defense Department here. I was a counterterrorism and irregular warfare professor. And if anybody called me an expert, I mean, when I was being introduced in the media stuff, if you called me an expert or an academic, I would say, no, I'm sorry, don't call me that. Because the people who call themselves that aren't.
So it's remarkable. Like the expert class, this is, I think you're absolutely right to be like, look, reject the label expert, because it implies that you think you're part of a kind of privileged class that can't be questioned. And that has gone to their heads, hasn't it? I mean, you can see this on the left completely.
And the idea that they use the phrase, the consensus, or
Oh,
the science.
I love the scientific consensus.
There and the science. Well, what is the science? Because the science a few centuries ago was that the solar system isn't a solar system and it rotates around the Earth. That was the science back then. So, what do we vote? Do we vote on whether gravity exists and what the rate of acceleration is? I mean, this is when when you see who these people really are. Don't you dare question me. How dare you question me? I'm an expert. I've got a PhD from Stanford. Well, sorry, mate, your credibility simply by being of the Ivy League, an Ivy League that now has segregated graduations, when you can have a black graduation and a white graduation, and we're being told, the Boston's Children's Hospital is saying that you can, a child's identity is assigned at birth by a doctor randomly, and that we can change that sex, that gender, by doing double mastectomies on 15-year-old girls. That's your expertise. That person should be in prison. That's what's happened to the expert class.
No, you hit on a really great point there, because there's a historian called Thomas Kuhn who wrote a book called The Structure of Scientific Revolutions. And he pointed out that, look, every single scientific revolution begins with a mass of experts in the center who are personally invested in the paradigm. And so they don't want to see change. And then a small but growing number of dissidents begin at the margin. And eventually the evidence on their side becomes so overwhelming, it overturns the paradigm that kind of rushes in like a sea. And then the new paradigm, people move into that. And then the dissidents again builds up and it rushes in. And this is how it works. So the very idea, the notion of trust the science, have faith in the science. Well, I mean, A, that's unscientific. That's antithetical to the scientific method. And B, how are you not positioning yourselves as the new priests now? I don't need to have faith in science. In fact, that's the point of science. And so you can see that this whole thing is being used actually in a rather Machiavellian way, isn't it? This is about control.
It's a clerisy. It has become the new clerisy. And the whole idea of peer-reviewed journals. I've written in peer-reviewed journals. It's a mutual wank fest, excuse my French. I mean, these are the gatekeepers of the gatekeepers of the gatekeepers. And if you read James Lindsay's book, Cynical Theories, and this is a PhD in mathematics, who just decided to write fake articles. They wrote an article about rape culture amongst dogs and how it is reflexive of the patriarchal society among humans. And they get it published in a peer-reviewed journal. They took Mein Kampf and removed the word Nazi and replaced patriarchy in there against, they changed the words and they get them published in peer-reviewed journals until somebody spills the beans. Then where's the science? Is it just a club?
That's the problem, isn't it? Because, okay, your peer review, okay, but that implies that there's some sort of plurality of thought amongst the peers, right? If you're all a bunch of radical feminist activists peer reviewing each other's papers, that's not worth anything.
Right. I mean, look, have you seen Matt Walsh's movie, What is a Woman?
I have indeed.
When, I mean, funny for about 20 minutes and then chilling. I mean, utterly chilling. When he challenges the philosopher in Boston and he challenges the pediatrician with regards to, do children know what they're doing at age 14? And then she says, what does she say? Do chickens cry?
Yeah, it's a non sequitur.
Sorry? So
it's a non sequitur at best.
If a chicken lays eggs, it's a female. Sorry. Oh, but if it cries,
how does the chicken identify? So I don't need to know, actually.
Right. And these are quote unquote scientists. I mean, who are performing gender transformations on girls, young girls, on boys. This is when you realize this isn't just a philosophical debate. This is evil versus good. When you are, removing the genitals of a young boy, you're satisfying yourself, your own ego, and you're kneeling down before Baphomet. I mean, it's just truly evil.
Well, it's just remarkable to me that anyone could suggest that surgery that is effectively castration results in castration, even if it's not done for that reason. How anyone could say that's in the best interest of a young person is
or
beyond me.
reversible. When the doctor says all of these things are sorry,
and that was a total lie. That was an outright lie. She says, "Oh, it's completely reversible." Yeah. It's like, no, it's not. You know it's not. We know it's not. You've just lied to Matt Walsh's face, and you can tell on his expressions. He's like, right, okay.
When you use the word Lupron, which is the actual trade name of the drug that is being given to these young boys, and you say the only certified use for Lupron is to chemically castrate sex offenders in prison, and you're giving it to young boys. I mean, that
can't be
dark.
legal.
That's dark. No, it is. It's happening here in America.
I know it is, but it shouldn't be legal. Then maybe I should say.
No.
So how do you think? Let's move on to talk about rank punditry, if you don't mind. Let's talk about the midterms in 2022 and then 2024, because as you saw, for 2024, I think it's got to be Trump. How do you think things are going to go in the midterm and then in 2024?
So first things first, if you're a new viewer to the Lotus Eaters, you got to watch Carl's 6-minute video from a week or two ago on why it has to be Trump. That's why I got him on my show. Again, superlative. I haven't seen an American do as good an explication in 6 minutes. So guys, watch that video.
It could be that I have an outsider perspective, and so perhaps I see things a bit more differently.
Alexis de Tocqueville, the best book on American politics ever written was Alexis de Tocqueville, a Frenchman. So there's that. And I'm an immigrant, by the way, as well. So I have a certain take on the United States. Midterms, 55 to 65 seat win. We're going to crush the Democrats in the House because of the rank swamp creature, the fetid invertebrate that is Mitch McConnell, the putative conservative leader of the Senate. We may not even win the Senate because he's been so anti all of Trump's nominees for the Senate. So it's a kind of 50-50 bet as to whether we take back the Senate with 1 or 2 seats. We're going to crush him in the House, which is very important because it's going to be another 2 years of this senile old man in the White House until we get President Trump back. And in the US system, it is the House that exclusively controls the purse string. So all spending for federal government has to be approved by the lower house, and we can strangle the permanent bureaucracy and stop the insanity of what they're doing, targeting parents at school board meetings and everything else, and the 87,000 new IRS agents. So we'll take the House. Got to have a robust leadership from Kevin McCarthy. Senate is a toss-up, and then if they don't stop him, and they're going to try everything to stop him with the latest Mar-a-Lago raid, President Trump will announce, and he's going to stroll back in.
Right. Well, I mean, I'm deeply hopeful that that's the case, because not only do I think emotionally and morally that would be the right thing, but I think genuinely, I mean, how much money has Biden printed in 2 years? Yeah. I mean, it's trillions, isn't it?
Trillions.
Like it's and people underestimate America's impact on the world economy as well. And so watching this from an outside perspective, that years down the line, we're still going to be feeling the effects of all of this. So it just genuinely terrifies me that such, and I was going to say incompetent, but it's not incompetent. It's a malevolent administration that's taking control of the United States. And you are right. I think it does come up to a kind of good and evil style battle. And again, as an atheist, it seems strange to say that. But when you realize that good and evil are really terms of intention, right? Is someone well-intentioned towards you, or are they ill-intentioned towards you? That you realize, it's very easy to see who the good and the evil are in this situation. Donald Trump, a clear lover of America and American people, wants the best for America. Well, Joe Biden, I mean, there was a clip going around Twitter, I don't know whether you saw it, of Joe Biden and Nancy Pelosi praising China, just constantly praising China. Oh, it'll be a good thing when China's risen up. It's like, no, it won't. It'll be a bad thing for everyone, everywhere, all the time, for a very long time. And it's so easy to see the problem.
But it's not just what they're doing to the economy and to the interconnectedness of the economic relations America has. People, in the last 7 months have asked me on numerous occasions, in interviews, what would President Trump have done differently after the invasion of Ukraine? And I laugh and I say, what do you mean? He never would have invaded. It wouldn't have been one. I mean, when the great Russian colluder, President Trump, is the only man in history since the Russian Revolution of 1917, who, when he saw a bunch of Russian mercenaries mucking around in Syria, told the Defense Department, "Oi, kill them now." And we killed when I was in the White House, we killed more than 200 Russian mercenaries. We know they were there working for Vlad. And what did Vlad do in response? He didn't even mention it. We killed 200 Russian soldiers in the Middle East, and he didn't even have a press conference because he was shatting himself about it. I mean, this is. You don't have to be an internationalist. You don't have to be an interventionist. President Trump is not an interventionist. Neither am I. But when America is strong, guess what? Bad guys think twice. There's a reason that we pulled out of Afghanistan exactly a year ago. And what happened? Vlad looked at his watch and he said, guys, start the engines. We're taking Ukraine. Whether it's Kim, North Korea, whether it's Iran, whether it's China, whether it's Russia, they behaved themselves when Donald Trump was in office. Now they say everything to play for. Taiwan, sure. JCPOA, Iran deal, nuclear weapons, absolutely. So it's not just the economic ramifications. When America doesn't have a robust president, bad things just happen.
And isn't that just the truth of it as well? They behave. It's very much, and it's deeply human, isn't it? They forget that the dictators are not like, unhuman monsters. They are people with concerns, and they've got lizard brains. And when you've got Donald Trump tweeting very aggressive things on Twitter, fire and fury and things like, well, he might. And so they're like, okay, well, we just won't take the chance. And look at Joe Biden, the total opposite. When
you tweet, I'm going to turn North Korea into a sheet of glass.
Yeah.
Little Kim thinks twice about it.
And lo and behold, what was it, 6 months later, Donald Trump's walking across the DMZ. Unarmed, unescorted. And it's just like, that is a crazy moment in politics.
It's ballsy. I heard you talk about it. Yeah.
You would never have predicted it. And yet we're watching it happen. Videos of it happening. It's like, okay, that's never going to happen again, especially, at least not under Joe Biden's style regime of international politics. It's just not going to work.
We have, I mean, just think of this for a second, just a little bit of, added color. Joe Biden got boosted for the 48th time, and he's injected on camera. And this was revealed afterwards in a fake version of the White House that they've built across the street in the Eisenhower building. And then you go, what is this, the Truman Show? I mean, when I was in the White House, we didn't need fake movie sets 1 block from the West Wing. We had the West Wing, and they actually recreated the West Wing in an office building a block away. What is going on?
I had exactly the same thoughts. It was very peculiar, and it speaks to a sort of deep inauthenticity about everything about the Biden administration, doesn't it? Because like you say, you have the West Wing. Just do it there. Like, why do you need to, I don't know, fake everything? But maybe it's just a natural method of thought for these people.
It is. Everything has to be engineered. Everything has to be a Potemkin village. When I first moved here, I moved here for a year at the end of the 90s. And I did all the circuits because I was working in national security project for the DOD. So I went to all the, the receptions and the embassy cocktail evenings or whatever, because it's the nation's capital. And I hated it because what did I see? Within seconds, I saw this trend. You walked into the ballroom or whatever, and you went to introduce yourself. Hi, I'm Sebastian Gorka. And the person you're shaking hands with, before they finish introducing themselves, Carl, they're already looking over your shoulder to see if there's somebody more important walking into the room. Oh. That's the nation's capital. Everything is fake. And the thing about Donald Trump, people always ask me, hey, what's he really like? What's he really like? And I say, sorry to disabuse you, whether he's in front of 60,000 people in a football stadium or with you alone in the Oval Office, what you see is what you get. There's no Janus face duality. There's no, come in and make sure my hair's perfect. And then that rictus grin for the TV cameras. Yeah. He is exactly the same behind closed doors as he is in public. And they love that. They can see that.
And the thing is, like, there's too much live footage of Donald Trump to think it's otherwise, right? There's literally too many hours of live footage of Trump just riffing in front of massive crowds for it to not be obviously what he is like. And
that's the best part of the speeches. When he goes, I've told everybody the toughest job in the White House wasn't national security advisor. It was the kid who had to run the teleprompter because you have that big joystick. And then, oh my gosh, he's gone off script. When's he coming back? When's he coming back? Do I move the text or not? That's the toughest job. Because when he goes off script, that's the best stuff.
It's
it's like Oh, it's the gold. And,
Yeah.
and then the other point with regards to prior to him becoming president, remember this. This is an individual who was feted by everyone. Before he announced that he's the Republican candidate, rap singers, I mean, you could dam the Thames with songs about the Don sung by rap singers, guest appearances in the Home Alone movies, guest hosting SNL, Saturday Night Live, the biggest comedy show in America. They loved this guy because he was larger than life. Then, he crossed the line because he said he's a conservative.
Can't have that.
Nope.
Can't have that. He's betrayed the movement, as it were.
Yes.
But one thing, I tell you, the cultural impact of Trump before he ran is actually a really interesting thing to get onto, because he was a genuine phenomenon.
Yes.
You know, and he was good. He was, you know, he was like a good celebrity. And it is very peculiar to see. And I genuinely felt for Trump, because there was a White House Correspondents' Dinner or something like that, where Barack Obama was ripping on him from the stage. And you could see he was just like taking it in good humor, but it was like, this is what they're like. You know, these are the people. And I think that if there's one genuine weakness I think Trump has had, it's a desire to want to have those people come onto his side, you know, and I think that that's gone now. You can see it from his posts on Truth Social. Like, you know, he understands that those days are over. You know, they're not really like him.
Think about what he's gone through. And this is perhaps, you know, you talked about the arc of his story and how the justice has to be the fruition of the arc, and that's why he has to come back to the presidency. Think of what this man has gone through. So this individual, billionaire, didn't need to be president because he didn't need the money and he didn't need the fame. You know, when you've got golden towers in Manhattan and, you know, the golf course in St. Andrews, you're not going to be more famous by being president. So why did he do it? Why did he do it at all? Because he loved America. He saw it being sold out and he wanted to save it. He's a guy who builds stuff and thought he could fix it. So he ran when he didn't have to. And he has literally lost hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars because of what they did to him. And not only that, what happened for the 4 years he was in office? First, he was called a misogynist, then an Islamophobe, then a racist, then a bigot, then a Nazi, and then a white supremacist and an anti-Semite. This is a man, two things, whose daughter converted to Judaism, whose grandchildren are Jewish. And when I was in the White House, we talked about keeping his campaign promise to recognize Jerusalem and move the embassy.
Which he did.
Which he did for 23 years. For 23 years, we made that commitment 23 years before he was elected president. Every single president, Republican and Democrat, every 6 months had to tell Israel, sorry, guys, we're not doing it this year, a little bit dicey. He came along and there was a meeting of the cabinet where he said, where he was told only 3 people supported him. Only 3 people in the cabinet. Mattis, Mad Dog Mattis, the Marine Corps legend who was the Secretary of Defense, said, don't do it, President. Don't do it. You're going to ignite World War III. And he said, Jim, I promised the American people. I promised the people of Israel. Oh, and by the way, it's the right thing to do. This guy is the racist, anti-Semite, bigot. I mean, the things he has been put through as a result, it's not an empirical argument, but your video on how the arc of his story has to be satisfactorily closed is so appealing.
Oh no, I totally agree. I mean, one of the other moments from Trump's presidency that really made me just look at him in a different light was when he got Kanye West into the White House, into the Oval Office, and Trump hardly said a thing. Kanye just started going off on like, no, look, there are, you know, this is what I'm feeling. And you're all saying he's a racist, but he's not. He's listening to what I'm saying. You know, he's actually understanding my message, you know, and they just want to say, yeah, but you're black, Kanye. And he's like, no, I'm Kanye. You know, I'm more than just this. And like, you know, with a lot of like black conservatives, like you could see that he had really tapped into like an understanding that he was prepared to accept them as they were coming to him, you know? And there was something genuinely kind of heartwarming about all of this. And again, watching as a foreigner, I was like, there's actually a kind of healing moment here that if the Democrats weren't so bloody evil, they would see this too. There's something genuinely human that's going on here, you know?
What was the reaction of the left? The reaction was, you're therefore not black.
Yeah, they call him horrible names.
Yeah, the white liberal. I mean, we have a race problem in America, Carl. It's white liberals.
Yeah.
White liberals.
Yeah, it
because
is.
They're saying to Candace Owens or Kanye West. Oh, the trouble with you is if you like Trump, you're not black. I mean, I have it on my sound box for my radio show.
I mean, Joe Biden literally said
yes.
That.
If you don't vote for me, you ain't black. Dude, you grew up in Connecticut. What's the ain't black thing about? That's the ultimate bigotry.
But this has always been what the Democrats have been about, isn't it? They've always been the party of race. Whether you go back 100 years or you look at them now, they're obsessed with race. Yes. They can't not talk about it. Whereas I've obviously met a lot of Republicans. I've been to America many times, met a lot of Republicans, spoken to a lot of Republicans, and none of them want to talk about race. None of them bring up race. They talk about values, they talk about principles, they talk about actions, they talk about your character, genuinely speak in a what I would consider, I guess, a post-racial manner. It's just not the thing that occupies their thoughts. Whereas as soon as you speak to a Democrat, that's all they care about. It's race, race.
Let's be historically factual. The Democrat Party was the Democrat Party of the South, the slaveholders, the plantations. The Ku Klux Klan was actually the armed terrorist wing of the Democrat Party, founded by a Democrat, Nathan Bedford Forrest. And beyond that, who was the first Republican president? Abraham Lincoln, the great emancipator of black slaves in America, who was murdered by a Democrat. So this is the history of the Democrat Party. What the Democrat Party is very skillfully done, and it's not really to their credit. It's the European neo-left, the Gramscian transformation. They realized, thanks to that communist cripple in that prison cell in Italy in the 1920s, that in an established nation with strong Judeo-Christian values, you will never have a peasants' revolt. The only place you have communist revolutions are backward countries like Russia in 1917 or China in 1948, where you have a robust middle class that has Christian values. The idea that some cretin's going to come along and say, build the barricades, come with me, and we're going to have, the means of production are going to be captured by the people and there'll be no private property. The middle class goes, are you on crack? I mean, the middle class says, no, that's a joke. So what
the middle class says, we own the private property.
Right. Screw you. We own it. We built it. Or I'm the shopkeeper from Grantham, right? And you're not taking my shop from me.
Yeah.
And then what does Gramsci say? The genius of it. And this is today's Democrat Party. This is, the BLMs of the world. If you can't instigate, if you can't trigger an interclass war because the middle class is too robust, well, don't build a barricade to take on the man. Become the man. Infiltrate it. This is the Rudi Deutschker and the Long March through the institutions. This is Marcuse. Become the culture, because there's Andrew Breitbart, who didn't discover it, but he made it the bon mot of the conservative movement. Most people don't stop to think about what it means. But here, if you mention Andrew Breitbart, they say, yes, politics is downstream from culture. Now, what does that mean? It means by the time an issue, whether it's the border, taxation, national security, arrives in DC, arrives in London, arrives at the political hub, it's been settled 10 years ago in the culture. It's been settled in the movies, in the high schools, in the colleges, on social media. So this is the genius of the left. They understood that culture is the answer to dominance politically. And we conservatives, I grew up under Thatcher. I consider myself a classical conservative or a liberal. And I say, well, we just kind of stood and let them do it. We were too busy paying the bills, making sure the kids got to school on time, and we allowed them to take over. I mean, think about it. When the New York Times says that Hillary Clinton has a 93% chance of winning, and then Donald Trump does, I mean, that shows you not only the self-delusion, but the amount of power they have in terms of, we had no media on our side. We had Breitbart and a bit of Fox News, and that was it. And we still won. So finally, we're waking up, but it's been 40 years of us just watching them take over the culture.
And I think the way you characterize this is fantastic. You are right, Breitbart, politics downstream from culture. And you are right that the cultural issues are settled normally by normal people in their own lives. And that shows the artificial nature of woke progressivism now, doesn't it? Because this wasn't an answer to a natural demand that people had. This was something that was very artificially concocted in specific universities by academics we can name, and then indoctrinated into now the second generation of youths going to university. So you can see the artificial nature of this thing. And that really, I think, proves Breitbart right, at least in some regard, that if you allow them to take over the culture, well, then they will take over the politics. And that is exactly, as you say, what conservatives have done, isn't it?
There's no groundswell demand for double mastectomies of 14-year-old girls, right? There's no innate traditional demand for the castration of little boys. The only reason we get to the transgender insanity is because somebody said masculinity is toxic. Right? It is the third, fourth wave feminism. This is totally artificial, and it goes back. I mean, critical race theory is just one branch of critical theory. And if you read James Lindsay's book, the most eye-opening segment is the segment on queer theory. If you understand what queer theory is and what it says academically, the whole point of queer theory has nothing to do with homosexuality. It has to do with screwing with your mind so that anything which is normal is deemed abnormal, that we will make you question everything so that the perverse becomes the normal and the normal is deemed to be abnormal. That's where this all gestates originally. And now we are just seeing the end results of that gestation that is being exercised on young girls, young boys, and so forth. So yeah, it is absolutely artificial, but it is the obvious end state of postmodern secular deconstruction. This is Derrida, Foucault, and everybody else.
So I hate to say it, but we've only got about 10 minutes left. Sure. So would you like to give me your view on what you think in the next, say, 10 or 20 years will beset our civilization? Like, how do you think this is all going to play out?
Right. So domestically and internationally, let's take them in two baskets. Domestically, I hope I'm not being Pollyannish or too rose-tinted about this. And it has come up again and again in our conversation. I do think the transgender insanity will be the blue touch paper, will be the catalyst for most people to take back America and take back our civilization. When I saw it in Virginia with the election of a Republican governor who ran on a very, very milquetoast, boring, pro-business platform, until he saw what the mama bears, the parents were doing at the school board meetings under COVID, and said, no, you're not teaching my kids that if he's white, he's an oppressor, if he's black, he's a victim. And he embraced the culture war in the last 2 weeks, and that's how Glenn Youngkin won. So I think there's going to be this massive red pilling of people who are otherwise apolitical, who will say, no, you're not doing that to my children. You're not teaching them Marxism under the cover of hating America or racial politics. So number one, I believe that I believe Brexit is absolutely an indicator of how we can save the West. I see what's happening with the transgender movement being rejected in America as a very positive sign. Externally, and I credit Steve Bannon and the president for this. I came into the White House to do counterterrorism. That was my background. But once you get the clearances, once you read the presidential's daily briefing and everything else, you realize we'll deal with Russia, we'll deal with ISIS, which we did, we'll deal with North Korea, we'll even deal with Iran. The only threat we face at a strategic peer competitor level is China. China has a plan to destroy the West, to become a world in which they are the pole nation and everybody else is either vanquished or a tributary nation. So we have to wake up. If you look at what they did to Australia, the way they actually literally bought off members of parliament in Australia, this is just a sign of things to come. So we need robust leadership back in the White House. President Trump gets it. I mean, you can see interviews with Oprah that he did in the 1980s. I did see it. Yeah. Right, where he's talking about China is the problem, China. So this is a guy who understands it because he's a businessman. So I'm an optimist, but really at the end of the day, we've got to find our courage. One of the most depressing things for me in the last 2 years as an immigrant to this nation, which was built on rugged individualism, the pioneer spirit, is to see so many people genuflect to the quote unquote political class. When we were told to shut down every business in America except Walmart and Amazon, and private business owners did, there should have been a big, up yours from the people of America who said, no, I get to feed my kids and my employees get to feed their kids. So we need to rediscover that courage, because courage is the virtue that makes all the others possible. So it's up to your viewers, it's up to everyone across the world to say, you know what, I'm going to fight for the future because nobody else will.
Dr. Gorka, thank you so much for joining me. This has been great. This is, again, the time has just gone too quickly. But yes. Congratulations on all your success. I hope the book does really well. And I hope you'll come back again at some point in the future.
Anytime. And likewise, we look forward to having you on America First. Keep doing what you do, Carl.
Thank you very much. Cheers.
Cheers.